So the only reason, to my mind, that Trump won is because he gave license to grievance. Because when you look at the split voting tickets, Kamala Harris would lose in a state, but a ballot initiative around abortion would pass, or she would lose at a certain number, right, in a certain state, say, but the Senate candidate, the Democratic senatorial candidate, would win, right? Or Democrats would be were more successful down ballot in a lot of places. So part of what we need to just kind of admit is that race and gender played a significant role in the election outcomes, and that to pander to that, to my mind, um, is to deepen the malaise that we currently find ourselves in, and we cannot do that. If we're talking about plutocrats who are trying to exercise outsized influence because of their wealth, um, you see this impacting very clearly the way in which the fourth estate works. Look at what's happening with the Washington Post, with the Los Angeles Times, the New York, and the like. You see Musk, who obviously has conflicts of interest, right, exercising undue influence over government policy. And when I say policy in this instance, who will head certain departments of government, certain policies that are being touted, and was never approved by a voting electorate at all. He's just his money. He spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help Donald Trump get elected. And we see Musk aligning himself with neo-Nazi and far-right forces in Germany, in Britain, and the like, having an undue and outsized impact on the way in which countries outside of the United States are engaged in their business. So what should a Democratic Party do in the face of these plutocrats, in the face of these oligarchic forces? Well, it's going to have to confront its own complicity with it. It's going to have to confront the way in which big money drives the Democratic Party. It's going to have to build a coalition that actually speaks to everyday, ordinary working people. And when I say everyday, ordinary working people in the United States, I'm not just talking about white working people. They're going to have to speak to young folk, right? Those millennials and those Gen Zers and Gen Yers who have concluded that the country is broken. Many of whom are reaching for vocabularies, languages, to imagine a different kind of politics. Some of them are reaching for old languages, the old language of fascism, as a way to respond to the disorder. But many others are trying to figure out how might they respond to, this deep class division, right? The ways in which old prejudices and the like demean and diminish the humanity of others. The Democratic Party has to untether itself from the big money that distorts our politics. That's going to be a large and very difficult challenge. But, that big money is what stands in the way of a fundamental transformation of healthcare policy in the country. That big money stands in the way of a fundamental transformation of the way in which we think about agricultural policy in this country, food supply, the way in which we think about criminal justice reform, and the like, right? So part of its task, right, is to be honest about what's distorting and disfiguring American democracy in this moment. And to my mind, it's a toxic combination of three things. One, greed, unbridled greed. Two, selfishness. Liberty in the United States, freedom in the United States both have become synonyms for selfishness, a kind of libertarianism on steroids. And the last, of course, is hatred. So greed, selfishness, and hatred have in so many ways, right, distorted and disfigured and deformed the very ways in which democracy functions in the United States. And if the Democratic Party is going to be serious about how it situates itself in relation to these forces, it's going to have to confront the greed, the selfishness, and the hatreds that's within it. And that's a hard task.